Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I have one of my favorite guests back with me today. Today we're going to be getting more into the secret space program and stuff. And I have with me back for I think this is the third time she's been on my show. I have with me Rebecca. Rebecca. Why am I forgetting Rebecca Rose? She also goes by Rebecca Rose Barfoot. Rebecca is a multidimensional energy intuitive seer and channel. As a medium for cosmic mentorship and soul coaching, she's here to connect you with all the vast natural wisdom you have all within you, teaching others to look beyond the veil of conventional conditioning to reclaim your personal power and purpose is her specialty. Rebecca awakened to the spontaneous light language channeling several years ago and works with a powerful team of spiritual guides to assist others on the journey of remembering. We come from the stars. We are expressions of creation, and now we must remember ourselves in the heart of the world. With a starseed heritage connected to Sirius, Antares, and Andromeda galaxy, Rebecca has had many extraordinary encounters with extraterrestrials in multidimensional reality. Early in her life, she also had a very anomalous, non-benevolent experiences that include military abductions that landed her in the secret space program. Subjected to trauma-based mind control and taken sideways through time, she was sent off-world as a psychic operative and cyborg soldier to serve in the dark control agenda. Years of self-healing, shamanic journeying, and her inner child work have given her the ability to intuitively help others from a place of deep compassion, using the blueprint for her own life as a model. And yeah, this is amazing. So Rebecca, thanks for coming back on the show. How are you?
Yeah, I'm glad to be with you again, Rob. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So we were going to talk about a little bit about your time on Mars today, but I think for the people who haven't seen you yet, how can you talk about how you landed on Mars?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
how did you remember all this too? I think that's important to get into as well.
Yeah, this is awesome. Yes, it's of course people would need a background. So, my father, I always point the finger at my father. My father worked for the deep state military industrial complex. He was an aerospace engineer working with the Navy, Lockheed Martin, CIA, NASA, etc. And I do have documentation, and I've done a video on that on my YouTube channel. But through him and through both my parents were in the military, there was a vetting process that I think was very much connected to my soul agreement, but also, choosing these parents who would then, kind of be the breeders for a couple of my lab kids, including my brother. And in 1982, I was taken into a long time and back, we would say a 20 and back, right before I turned 10. So this was like September of 82. There was a lot that happened prior to that, but just for today, as we're speaking of Mars, I can abbreviate that just to get to the point of when I left. So that kind of dates me. I mean, I'm in my early 50s now. Yeah, it was through Dad, really, that I think all this happened, coupled with my own soul agreement. And as far as memory retrieval, I was hit by a car back in 2012 on a cycling, biking out in northern New Mexico. And I had quite a head injury. And it was after that that things started to kind of unfold in my memory. Like I had awareness of certain things, but not as much as would begin to come in over, the ensuing years after that accident. So I think it started to I don't know how we would say, unravel things through the mental landscape and the subconscious mind, which stores all of our memories, even the ones we think we can't have access to. And coupled with the head injury, also beginning in 2013, a meditation practice, daily meditation, devoted meditation practice, and sitting with stillness, sitting with myself, because after the accident, all these things started coming in. I was at my wit's end. I was really kind of falling apart. So sitting in meditation, as you know, will turn you, tune you into deeper brainwave states, which then really ease the passageway for memory to come back. This is a good topic, like you said, because people say, well, how do you remember all of this? How did that happen? And it's different for everybody. But that was my process. And to this day, it's slowed down, but still all the years I was gone, all the years I was off world, there's so many memories that keep coming, that it's yeah, like I said, not as in the quickened way that it was, but it's still It's too
Yeah,
long.
I was gonna say, do you think there was like some kind of like synchronicity with the fact that it happened in 2012? Because that was like the end, kind of like the end of the Mayan calendar, and that was like when the Mayans predicted that like humanity would like kind of wake up and evolve. So it seemed like a lot of people between 2012 and now have like kind of woken up to the fact that their reality isn't what they thought it was. That like, so did you feel like that there might have been some kind of synchronicity with that?
Totally. I totally feel that looking back. And at the time I was not, you know, I was somewhat spiritually oriented, but I wasn't really I had a really steep learning curve. Like if you would have asked me in 2012 that I believe in extraterrestrials and all of this shit, I would have said, are you fucking crazy? Excuse me. Like, no, I don't believe in this. So it turns out like the joke is on me. Like, right. I didn't even, I would have turned my back on all this. So, and also to your viewers who might be newer to this kind of arena of SSP stuff, which is really fringe. I get it if it's tough for people to wrap their minds around it. It totally makes sense to me why people wouldn't believe it.
but there is a lot of believability to it as well, because like there's people like yourself where you have like evidence and you have like supporting evidence that kind of goes with your testimony, right?
Yes. Yes.
Like with your dad and all that, and so it's like it's really interesting, like your story. Like so let's get into this. Like when did you start putting together that you were on Mars, and then what do you remember about Mars? Like
Yeah. Yeah. So the Mars information really consolidated around the time of my dad's death, which was interesting. This was in 2019. Those the memories started getting clear, and his 2020 death. It's interesting because he was such a handmaiden to the experiences in the SSP. For me, that's like almost when the handler dies, or when the, you know, somebody involved dies, that's when there's a flood of memory. So I remember being twinned. I had a psychic twin. We were twinned at Great Lakes Naval Station north of Chicago and then sent to Mars. We were groomed, augmented to become super soldiers over a period of years. So remember, I'm 9 years old. He's 9 years old, Dean, my twin. He's still living. We haven't met, but I get psychic connection with him once in a while. Anyway, not that we could go off in so many splinter tangents here and be talking for many hours and days, but but yeah, we were augmented and trained over a series of years, really trained in doing psychic recon together. And also I was trained as a pilot, originally telekinetically, using my mind to interface with a consciousness of a craft, to pilot, and trained as a, you know, a ground soldier. And we were, a lot of times our job the bases on Mars was a little bit boring. We were just patrolling, but there's also a lot of activity inside of that. Eventually I was, you know, I was cloned a bunch of times and used in the galactic slave trade, traded off to the Draco, and was serving off in the Kuiper Belt, owned by the Draco, much later in my, you know, my late 20s, before all this ended. So that's like condensing things into like a little tiny sound bite. Mars was a place where I have a lot of memories. I felt like I kind of would never leave there. So much happened there. And interfacing with different races on Mars, and, you know, different people coming and going at the base. Um, I remember more humans there, you know, as far as the personnel at the base, to be mostly humans outside of the mantids, who were our surgeons, our techs, and our kind of, they were the sort of had the manual dexterity to do a lot of things for us. Yeah, so many things.
oh, what I was gonna
Anything.
say was it's interesting. Like I've had Olivia James on my show, and she has memories of Mars too, or she feels like she worked for Mars Defense Force, and her memory comes from like hypnotic regression recall. Like, did you ever do any hypnotic regression too to dig up some of this, or is yours mostly come from meditation?
It comes up through the process of meditation, or even sometimes I'll be out by riding my bike or in the shower, like where my mind is in a different brainwave state. So I actually tried, somebody said, hey, do you want me to regress you? I'm like, we can try. But because hypnosis was used on me as a child in very bad situations, to control me and to do bad things to me, it's like I will not submit to it. Like I just don't relax into it. Like, get away from me with that. I don't want to do that. I
Yeah.
understand that other people have found a lot of relief, or, you know, maybe getting their information that way, but it's not something that's worked for me.
Yeah. One thing I was going to ask you was, do you have like alters, and have you had handlers, like two different things, but like, do you feel like you've had alters, and then do you feel like that you've had handlers in this life that have tried to keep you from accessing this information?
Yeah, I had a handler when this was when I was quite young, who was my godfather, who was, this was sort of tangent to the SSP, but he was ferrying me. He was with the Navy and worked in top secret with my father, with a high clearance, but he was a handler who got me to just be straight up with it, child pornography events for the deep state. So that he was one kind of handler. And as far as in my adult life, no. Now, previously in the decades hence, no. But during the formative years, which were all grooming me to be used in, these programs later, I did. Unfortunately, extended family was part of that. And then as far as altars, the altar that I remember was a programmed, again, being really blunt here, but I call it the kill command altar. In my soldier years, where we were trained to have no fear and no mercy as weaponized assets. I don't necessarily love the term super soldier, but it's the one we have, that we use in the community to talk about what I would call is like a Delta combat slave.
What's a can you tell that what that is? What's a Delta combat slave?
Well, it's my word for a super soldier. It's not
Oh,
something.
okay.
So it's
Okay.
just my language versus the super soldier sounds kind of glamorized. And I would say, man, there is nothing glamorous about these programs where you're so altered chemically, energetically, biologically, technically, surgically, given cocktails of drugs to make you into something else. Your psi ability, which, they wanted me for that because that's what I do full time as my work gig now. I always had that. But they amplify that. Whatever you have as a natural ability, maybe you're like a super Hulk guy with your musculature or something, they will build it out. They'll use your assets that you already come in with, biologically, otherwise, and work it to their advantage. So, yeah, just my riff on the combat slave versus super soldier. They're quite different in my mind, yet words for the same thing.
Yeah, and that's interesting. What I was going to say was, have you always been psychic? Did you feel like that you were psychic growing up, like before any of this happened, before you were taken at 9 years old? Like, did you and then like like just all throughout your life, were you always psychic and you always had abilities?
That's a really good question. Thank you. Yeah. As a child, I had, I saw dead people a lot, like seeing, those that were deceased and seeing things in the forest and having an awareness of things beyond this plane. Yes. But I think after all of that happened, it was to be put away. I was conditioned by the matrix, just like all of us, and kind of went wayward from it. Like, no, that's not a thing. I don't relate with that. And in the process again of meditation, which began back in let's say 2013, I had a massive psychic awakening, which accompanied the memory retrieval. So all these things started. I'm obviously a big proponent of meditation and sitting in stillness with the mind for so many reasons. But yeah, it's something that's been in me. It runs in my family. Both my father himself and my brother had a lot of intuitive psychic ability. My brother's also shut it down and won't look at his program memories, even though he spent his whole childhood drawing spaceships and aliens and reading sci-fi. So anyway,
Do
kind
you
of on
feel
a
like your
tangent.
brother was taken too?
I am quite sure he was also taken. We've shared. He's talked to me about being lifted up out of the house through being paralyzed at night, just like I was, trying to scream and can't get away, and being lifted up through the house, through the roof, as if levitating like a rag doll. And that's where I'm like, bro, like, where were the ETs? Tell me about that. And he just shuts down and changes the subject. Like, he won't go beyond that point. But anyway, our we're so matched in so many ways, and so many of the things that have the way I observe his psyche now, and just a lot of things. It very much points to being also in the programs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a really good question. So you were taken in the 20 and back program, and then you were put back at what, 9 years old? But so you lived a normal life, from what you could call normal, from like that time on. So when you were back in your normal life, did you ever have like what we would call like classic alien abduction symptoms? Like were you being taken by the aliens because maybe they knew what you had been through, and you know what I mean? Like so throughout your teenage years, throughout your 20s, did you ever have anything like that?
I had a lot of night paralysis, and that mute trying to scream, waking up feeling, and the feeling of like I had weird stuff going on at night. And I never, because I think my belief system was not aligned with the ET phenomena or with any kind of out of body experience, et cetera, et cetera. I kind of just went, I don't know what that is. Good enough,
Yeah.
get it going. Wake up, okay, move on. I don't, and I was also, to be really honest, like very dissociative. I mean, I was very dissociated from being in my body, being in my own awareness for a long time. So it'd be, something could have been happening to me, and I would not necessarily have registered it because of the family I grew up in which there was a lot of chaos and duplicity and confusion, and black is white, white is black, and 1+1 is 3. Like there was a lot of things that didn't add up in early life. So you get used to that later in life until you start waking up. So, yeah, I would not say that there was a lot of heavy interference, in the ensuing years that I really recall. I was definitely, once I started coming into memories and was about to start being public about it, I was sniffed out by a military helicopter when I lived, in my previous location from Alaska. It was really scary. And I'd never seen a helicopter like this, totally unmarked, gunmetal black, um, you know, really strafing me through the forest on my bike and circling around me. And anyway, that was interesting. But yeah,
That's a question I was going to ask you. I was going to say, like, how targeted have you been since you've come out with this information? Because it seems like I don't want to sound crazy, but I feel like I'm targeted to a certain degree. I feel like a lot of us are in this community. Some people don't want to talk about it. I definitely feel like I am. Just there's different things, and I'm not even I don't even feel like I was in the SSP, but I still feel targeted for the what I'm doing. I think
for the
that
work you're doing, Rob. Yeah, right. I don't feel like that's been a huge issue for me. And I relate that to two things. I think all of this is predicated on my soul's journey coming in. Like, this is what I'm going to go in. I'm going to explore the deepest, darkest hell realms on earth and the dark belly of the beast so I can eventually be part of its undoing. How do how do we fight the madness if from my soul's perspective? Well, I have to go experience it firsthand. So with that, I think I probably wrote into my script some kind of, I have some protection, like I do feel kind of protected. I don't say that in a pompous way, but just that I think that's part of, the benevolent connections that I also have in space, not just, the bad things that happen, but also the other side of that. And as well, a lot of practice with the heart. And when I talk about meditation, I work a lot with the energy center of the heart and the love vibration. What does that do? It changes your energy field entirely. So you're not living in fear. And what does that do? It shifts what you magnetize to you and draws to you what you need and keeps out what you don't.
That's so interesting that you say that. And I don't want to go off on a different tangent, but I guess we can do that on podcasts. You can go wherever. But I
You
just
can go
had,
wherever.
yeah, I just had Joe Gallenberger from the Monroe Institute on my show. And he was talking about like when you want to manifest something, like he was talking about how they go and they like do these experiments on slot machines where they'll have like they'll have like a warm feeling in their hands, an open heart. But he kept saying open heart and he kept saying manifesting from the heart. He was like, you can do amazing things. Like, so he kind of just like kind of backed up what you said. It seems like when we do things from the heart, it works better. And it seems like the heart is more powerful, maybe than I don't know. Like it seems like it's the thing we have to use to manifest or something. Is
It's
that
our,
true?
I hate to say weapon. It's like our secret weapon, but it is. It's what, we're taught to live from our shoulders up, like up in the head, right? This is the most powerful emanating battery pack, light source connection that we have. Like, we are divine creators from the heart, but we're at every turn in our, this reality, we've been conditioned to stay away from it. When, of course, like I said, I'm biased toward meditation and toward working with these things, but I think it's one of the keys to setting our planet free into a sovereign reality, individually and collectively.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, do you think we have a long way to go? Speaking of that, do you think it's like I mean, but
No.
it seems like more people are waking up though.
More people are waking up, it's so my client practice with all my sessions, I see so many people making massive journeys, and some of them are people who've been through program stuff, and some people are just more awakened through all the COVID stuff that we've gone through, and people going down all kinds of rabbit holes. I think there's a massive awakening, and when one person wakes up, it's like a ripple effect, right? So, like, to people listening, I would say never think that your own journey isn't incredibly significant.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I wanted to talk about, I think this is important, is you've had a lot of encounters with benevolent ETs. Like when did this start happening, and what were you in touch with? Like,
Yeah. In my childhood, there was a, how do I say? It was more like being in touch with the energetic field rather than seeing them so clearly, but more like their light presence. Um, I had that when I was a kid. I didn't necessarily trust it. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I don't know if I really talked fully to myself about it, but it was around. And this was like what I would call now as my friends with the Light Alliance, or more formally, we could say Galactic Confederation, which is again part of the soul journey and part of why I came in. I mean, I feel that and sense that I'm also out there on a benevolent ship. I call it the Light Alliance, but we would say again, formally the Galactic Confederation, with a group that, with many other ships, is wanting to liberate this planet. And then hence that feeds into the whole background about why did I kind of volunteer for this? Why did I come in for this? This wasn't random. It's super not random. And there's no victimhood inside of all this, as bad as the experiences may have been for me. Is gathering information, particularly connected to the galactic slave trade, which at the time, back in the 80s, was roaring, if we can even consider time through the quantum field. But we wanted more information about what was actually happening with that.
that's interesting. Yeah. So what do you think so you feel like this was like like a preordained thing, like that you were supposed to, like, this was maybe a soul contract that you came in, and that you knew that you were going to be a part of the SSP, but your whole mission was to kind of bring light to where the dark might be. Is that kind of?
Yes, yeah, and that's the name of my YouTube channel. Has that whole series, Bringing Light to the Darkness. It's like, yeah, we're going to go in and learn about this, and we're going to illuminate it and bring higher light and higher energy to it, in the process. Yes.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. That's amazing. So right now, are you kind of teaching people how to, like, be more in touch with, like, benevolent ETs, and how to, like, harness their energy, and, like, so they can live a better life and manifest and stuff like that?
Yeah, and I would get a little more fine-tuned with that, in that, like, connecting to one's own higher self, which is maybe part of that whole bigger picture. Some of us are a little wary, and understandably so, to connect with other beings whose intention might be, people are learning to trust themselves. And I teach, hey, discernment, and what are you connecting with out there? Connect with your higher self, and you can do that through the heart space. So getting cleared of all the conditioning and all the, matrix programs and all the heavy kind of energy, so we can be more illuminated, more tapped in with our intuitive ability, and to be sovereign. And to people come to me to learn all kinds of things about their past, their future, maybe other lifetimes, parallel experiences. It's really limitless. Yeah.
That's interesting that you said that. I love the whole idea of, like, parallel realities. And this one thing, do you feel like sometimes the secret space stuff happens in, like, a parallel reality? Because I've heard people say that they can kind of, like, take our consciousness now when we sleep. Like, so I don't I'm because, like, I have, some people think things happen in dreams, and I think the dream world is just another thing for a parallel reality, like, I don't know,
Yes.
but so I'm not necessarily in dreams, but do you feel like sometimes, like, some of this stuff might be happening in a parallel reality or something like that?
It sometimes feels like it. I think the here's what I know for sure, that these experiences are not entirely limited to the third dimensional plane, which is where our human minds that are chatting now in the beta brainwave state are kind of here in 3D. But to really understand the SSP and so many other of these, like out of body or near death experience, we have to put on a quantum mind state, which is not easy, So I would say there's so much goes on in the dimension beyond ours, beyond space and beyond time, which is probably, what percent is actually of reality is actually in that plane, a lot more probably than we realize because of our limited perspective here on Earth.
Yeah. And I was trying to understand quantum entanglement. I was thinking, I think it basically means like that, like I'm here and you're in Alaska, but like we're still
Yeah.
connected. Is that kind of what it means? Is it means we're all connected some way
Yeah. Yeah.
through quantumness, or is that what it means? Or
Yeah, well, beyond space and time, like non-locally, we're connected. Everything is connected. Whether it happened in the past, it's happening now, or if it's in this earth plane or at some other place, like everything is sort of, you could say that every cell, every one of your trillions of cells knows everything that ever happened or will happen, contains infinite amount of divine intelligence. And that's where we're being cut off through so many means around us on a day-to-day basis to keep us cut off from that spiritual wisdom.
yeah, I agree. So I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about like what we were going to talk about. We didn't really get into it, was the reptilians and stuff. What was your experience with them? Like, did you remember a lot about it? And like,
Yes, yes, I do. Yeah, I do. So we're talking about yeah, so going back to Mars, taking your audience, we've been around the block here a little bit. We're going back to Mars and the reptilians, the short local reptilians that are native to Mars, that I met, they picked me up when I crashed. So I'm out on patrol, kind of patrolling the base and moving beyond that, the local and kind of going farther than I should have. There's another story connected to that. But anyway, I crashed. I was actually shot down, and that's part of this other story. But this benevolent group picked me up. They lived underground. They seemed like they had survived a kind of cataclysm and were largely living under the earth in what seemed to me, in my memories, is a total oasis, and had trees and water, and they were producing food, and they had spiritually been able to advance themselves to a point where they were harnessing the consciousness of Mars itself to create what they needed to survive. Yeah, so they were nothing like the Draco. They were short. They were a little bit muscular and kind of a little bit wide. Would I say wide? Brownish green, and very, very connected, almost like a tribal or indigenous culture here on Earth. I mean, I remember them welcoming me in, having food with them, and like having really good memories there, which is one of the things that makes this an outstanding experience for me, because it was one time that I felt like I was really treated like a human, or like with benevolence and care in the programs. Like this is unusual given what I had become, an augmented part cyborg being with all this tech and all this, stuff. And part of the reason they picked me up was self-serving. They wanted to understand if I had a soul. They wanted to know what my biology was, and they wanted to know what my technology was, and if it could help save their dying subgroup of the population. They seemed quite isolated, and there was probably 30 of them. I mean, it was a small group, and I think that genetically they weren't faring very well. Yeah.
wow. That's so interesting. One thing you mentioned was that you were part cyborg. Were you at that point part cyborg, or like did they like make you a cyborg at some point?
Well, that's what the augmentations at the base were about, was augmenting me and building me out in a certain direction. Yeah, yeah. So, and I was cloned at this point. There was a bunch of different clones of me and others like me. I mean, it seems to be part of the super soldier engineering, that there's always going to be backup clones, because they know we'll be put into battle situations in which we'll be killed, harmed, or otherwise, needing a backup clone.
Do you ever like feel like do you feel like your clones are still out there somewhere, and do you feel like any kind of connection to them?
I have felt that there's a part of me that's not entirely back, that's serving as a watcher on some other timeline. Again, that gets really swimmy to the human 3D linear mind, right? To my own mind, but largely back, like not involved in an active combat situation or anything like that, or some kind of war, no. But there is sometimes a feedback from that arena that is a little hard to place or pin down. Yeah.
That's interesting. I always use Olivia James as an example because she has an interesting what she said she was doing. She said she was like she was a profiler on Mars, and she said that like the new people that were coming in were like so excited to be a part of it. Like she said, from what she remembers, she said that the new people were so excited to be a part of it, and she said that like people didn't realize that they were signing their life away. Like they weren't told
Wow.
that they. Do you
Wow.
agree with that? Kind of or no?
Well, you know what I want to say, that the programs on Mars have gone through so many iterations over the years. Like they were always, it was like a constant experimental lab in which they were always changing the way they worked. And so this is entirely possible, maybe not in the iteration of the program I was in, but you know, she was probably, I think Olivia was probably later on. Is that true?
I think so. I'm not sure. I think she was in the like the late '80s or something like that, or something,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
maybe not. Yeah, I'd have to ask her. Like,
Mhm.
I can't remember like exactly, but
So, so is this suggestive that they would have been volunteering for the programs rather than being
I think she thinks like from what she's getting, like she thinks now, like I guess like that when she was like leaving Mars, she said the new recruits were like, well, like really gung ho. That she said that they were kind of recruiting a lot of patriotic people that were like
wow,
psyched to be a part of it. Whereas instead of being kidnapped or like
yeah,
you and her were, like that these people were now being brought in on like a patriotic level, and they were like all kind of like gung ho about it. I think that's
wow.
kind of what she was saying, which is interesting. You know what I mean? Like it
It
makes me
is, it is.
wonder like where this is going now. Like and like if they're going to expand on the secret space program or if it's still, you know what I mean?
I do. I wonder this too, Rob. This is a good point. Like well, sometimes I pause and look like what's actually going on with Mars now. Is there a now? Can we talk about a now? Like what is happening? What's happening with the programs? I feel like with the programs, they've devised more psychic means or astral means of taking people. That seems to be more stuff going on through the realm of what we call sleep and dreams. And I mean, the transhumanist agenda is still going strong, as we can see from the whole, you know, COVID trajectory, for example, just that here on Earth. But I see a lot of clients with, you know, stories that maybe don't the stories don't always line up with one to the other. Like if their experience might have been more astral, or another person's experience might be more physical, militarized. Um, so I think part of that is so that we all look like a bunch of nutcases. Nothing adds up, and there's stories that are all over the map. So if you try and get a linear like profile of everything that's nice and tidy, you're going to have a difficult time. I mean, haven't you noticed that in interviewing people that it's quite
Yeah, it is. It's kind of all over the place. Yeah, you're exactly right. So, and I feel like that's done because I feel like they'll put
Mhm.
like, disinformation into like our community on purpose. So it leads us astray. You know what I mean? And you can't tell who's really disinformation or not. Like I can't, and I don't ever want to call anybody disinformation because I don't know for sure, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's so tough to tell what's going on, It really is.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, oh, so I was gonna say, well, I was gonna say, is there anything else you wanted to cover that I might have missed that we.
Oh, we could talk for days, Rob. I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so much. Nothing burning, you know. I think we had a good soundbite of some things today and touched some good things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I thought we kind of went all over the map, but I mean, I thought it was really good.
Mhm.
So I'll ask you this: so, what services are you providing now, and like, what do you offer? And if you want to talk about that a little bit, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, well, and this is a nice perk too, in that, you know, after all that I've been through, I'm able to do this for my full-time gig in service of other people and helping other people. That's great to come full circle with this after being, you know, through all that. Anyway, yeah, I do a lot of Akashic readings for people, soul council sessions, past life readings, quantum healing sessions, not regression, but yeah, more energy healing for people. This is all through online sessions with them, and then session packages that I have, inner child work that we do, and just go to the website and you can connect with what feels right. You know, if
Yeah.
people are looking for something.
This
Mhm.
was awesome. Like I was so happy we did this, and like your story's so amazing. Like it's like it's really interesting. Like and like I love the fact that you're like so heart centered. Like and that you've been able to like kind of pull through this trauma and like kind of like
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
doing what you're doing. It's amazing, you know?
Yeah, it's something else. I mean, it's extraordinary for me to be able to look back at where I came from in my earliest beginnings, everything that was going on there, and to be where I am now. It's like, oh, I feel like in some ways my life just started a few years ago. But I say that in the best of ways, and hopefully that's inspirational for anybody who might be watching, who's like, you know, feeling a little hopeless or lost with their own path, and like, oh my God, how am I ever going to get through this? Looking at a big mountain top
Oh no,
ahead.
no, I think you just hit the
Possible.
nail on the head. That's exactly why I love to do this, because for the people that are lost and they need inspiration, and they're probably like, there's a lot of people that are like coming, they're starting to get memories, but they don't really know where to go. So they might stumble across my channel, and they might stumble across your
Hmm.
channel, and then they see this interview and they're like, okay, this gives me some kind of like, like
Yeah.
maybe they can find some kind of footing, if that makes any sense, or like they can, build off it, like, and they can maybe see you and get help or something, if that, yeah, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And there's more and more, I think there is more and more help and acceptance of these really, like I said, fringe kind of parts of disclosure and, the SSP, um, all these
Oh,
experiences.
that's a good question. I didn't even think about asking you that. So, okay. So I don't know if you get into like old school ufology and kind of like what's going on with the nuts and bolts stuff, but I mean, like there are UFO hearings going on right now, and David Grush is a
Mhm.
big thing. Some people have called him a whistleblower. Some people say he's a fake. And he's a disinformation agent. Here's my whole thing. I just like, this is what I'm thinking. We've only been going 43 minutes, so I have a couple more minutes of it. So like, I don't understand like why he would come out and do the things he's doing and file for whistleblower clearance if he wasn't. I mean, I just don't understand, like, see like what he would have to gain from it. But I mean, maybe, some, on the flip side of that, maybe some people have ulterior agendas. But like, with all that said, I don't know if you've been following it much, but I'm sure you probably heard about it. Like,
I have no, to be honest, there's a lot of stuff that I don't have time to follow and I want to follow. So like, Rob, send me the links and I'll tell you what I think. Yeah.
okay, well, do you think we'll
From
ever
our
get this?
perspective, you and I are not people who would sign up to be disinformation agents. So it's hard for us to wrap our minds around like, oh, well, why would they be doing that? But it's always a possibility. I'm not informed enough to give an intelligent commentary on it right now.
Okay, but do you think we'll ever get disclosure? Like, do you think we'll ever get it to the point where the aliens land on the White House lawn, or the government comes out and says, yeah, like there's been disclosure. We've been having people have been abducted. They've been forced into these programs. Like, do you ever think we'll get like that full disclosure or anything like that, or we'll ever meet with aliens? I know I mean, it's an interesting question though.
I think so. I think that timeline's already been developed. I mean, I think that's already being created, and it's a part of our inheritance in a way. So yes, and I think the people like you and I who are already doing this work are bringing that timeline in, where there is more and more disclosure happening, and noticing that little. It might feel subtle, because it's not always on the evening news, but even more, if we look at what's going on with ET and UFO disclosure is getting like almost mainstreamed, even as much as there's much pushback, about that. I feel like it's way more normalized than it was even 10 years ago. So to me, that's a little bit of progression. Now, do I know when this is going to happen? I don't know, but I think I think we're in the positive as far as things unfolding, as much, like I said, as much acknowledging the blowback that is also happening.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you think go back 20 years ago, we couldn't even really talk about this stuff.
no.
Like, and now, instead of being looked at like we're crazy, now people give it a little bit respect, and they start to think, well, maybe there is some, because it's crazy to think that like we're out in this world. And I mean, to think that we're in this world and we're all alone
Like we're
is
the only, I mean, what hubris to think, yeah, like you said, like we're the only species in the massive, how many billions of galaxies out there. We're the only ones, right?
that
It's
shows you how conceited some humans are. They think that they're not really thinking about like the bigger picture. They're just thinking about their daily lives and like what they want to accomplish. You know what I mean? Like, it's I think there's some disconnect there with some people.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good point. I mean, I want people to, yeah, recognize that we have come pretty far. And I think the darkness, the depravity that I was in the cesspool of the programs back in the early 80s, late 70s, right? So I mean, I think that has also shifted, which is favorable. So there's always, I mean, depends on your, is a glass half full or half empty, right? I also want to tell people if they're really like, okay, I want to get more into Rebecca's story. It sounds kind of interesting. They can always go to my Sirius Blue. It's Rebecca Rose Sirius Blue YouTube channel, and maybe you can link that below too.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, I subscribed to that today. I didn't even know you had a channel. Like because I've seen you on Journey to Truth. I've seen you on James Rink's channel. Obviously, you've been on my show, but I
Yeah.
didn't know you had a YouTube channel of your own. So I just subscribed today. So I'm looking forward to
Yeah,
seeing like
it's
what's going
not
on.
huge because I don't I'm not like publishing like you like every other day or a few times a week. I'm publishing every, month or so. But there's 18 in episodes in the Bringing Light to the Darkness series, which details this from the very beginning, like in gestation in the womb, right, all through, everything, every little detail. It's very intimate. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna check it out tonight. And I just wanted to thank you. I consider you a really good friend, and I think you're doing like I mean, I know we've never met off the
I
internet, but
know,
I mean,
but
like I consider you like a good friend, and I love what you're doing, and I love your attitude about like this whole thing. You just have a refreshing perspective on this whole thing, and like
yeah.
and it's amazing, like because of what you've went through, and now you're like you're kind of like a breath of fresh air for like people that are coming out of these programs.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob. Thank you. And I really admire you who you're able to do this like full time and you're so devoted to everything. So thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thanks
yeah,
everybody for watching.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put this out tomorrow, and I'll send you a link. And yeah, and if you want a copy, I'll email you a copy. And thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, have a good
Bye-bye.
night, Rebecca. Take care.